Hey everyone, for those of you that are meeting me for the first time, my name is Nicole and I am the owner of Willow Props, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So I've actually been in business since 2011 and I make baby outfits. And I recently had to pivot, of course, because of the pandemic, and I started making masks. And so that's what today's video is going to be all about. I'm going to be teaching you how to make a simple accordion style mask. And you know, in my area, we actually have to wear masks. It's mandatory so that you can enter a place of business. And so I want to keep my family safe, and I'm sure that you want to protect others as well. So I'm going to be teaching you how to make an accordion style mask. If you got any fabric laying around or you just bought some, that's what we're going to be doing today. All right, I'm gonna go over the supplies that we're gonna need for today's tutorial. So we need a regular sewing machine, and you're gonna pick a thread that matches the fabric that you chose for your mask. And so I picked this gamer fabric because I think it's pretty cool. A lot of people are into playing games right now, especially since they're in quarantine. And side note, just wanna let you know, I actually designed this fabric. I sell my fabrics through Spoonflower. And so I'm gonna put a link in the description box so that if you wanna purchase any of these designs, feel free to check it out. And so for the inside of the mask, I picked a fabric that matches this one, and it's just a solid fabric for the inside part of my mask. And of course, you're gonna need some scissors for cutting your thread and also to cut out your mask. Now, if you don't have a cutting mat and a rotary blade, you can use your scissors too to cut your mask out. And last but not least, you are going to need elastic for the sides of your mask. So the size that you need for the front of your mask is going to be 6 by 10 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out a 6 by 10 rectangle. Okay, and so this is for the front of my mask. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the back of my mask. The back of the mask is gonna be slightly bigger than the front of the mask. We cut out a 6 by 10 rectangle for the front, and now we're going to cut out a 6.5 by 10 rectangle for the back of the mask. You may be wondering, why are we cutting it bigger? Well, the reason why is we're going to build a pocket so that you can put a filter into the back of the mask. So the next step that you're going to do is you are going to cut 1 inch down on the back of the mask. So horizontally, you're going to cut 1 inch down from the top. Okay, so I have my elastic here. You can use 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch elastic. I prefer to use black because, of course, with wearing a mask over and over, the white elastic tends to get dirty. So we're gonna go ahead and cut our elastic so we could get all of our cutting out of the way. So for the elastic, for the top and bottom measurements, it's going to be different because this type of mask actually goes around the back of your head so that it doesn't hurt your ears. And so for the top of the mask, you're going to do 10.5 inches. And for the bottom part that kind of goes closer to your neck, you're going to do 9.5 inches. All right, so the part that I told you to cut off of the top of the back of the mask, we're gonna go ahead and attach it. So you're going to fold it down, so right sides together, and you're going to match it up perfectly. Now, if you don't have a cutting mat that is a ruler, then you can use a measuring tape, but you're going to want to measure in 3 inches in. So I'm gonna place my pin there, and I'm gonna measure 3 inches in on this side. 1, 2, 3. And this is going to make the opening, the pocket for my filter. So now the next thing that we're gonna do is we are going to sew 1/8 of an inch all the way to this pin, stop, zig, you're gonna reverse stitch on it so that way you can lock in your stitch. And then you're going to continue and sew 1/8 of an inch over here all the way to the end so that you have this little opening right here. All right, guys, so we're gonna go ahead and sew our pocket. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put this under here. I'm lining it up with right here, which is the inner part of my foot. And so this is actually, I meant to say that it's 1/4 of an inch that we're sewing inward, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. All right, and I'm gonna pull out my pin so I don't sew over it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and reverse stitch to lock that stitch in. And then I'm going to lift up my needle and pull it all the way to here. I'm gonna put this down and pull my needle out. Go ahead and reverse stitch and sew all the way to the end. And that's it. So now we have the opening for our pocket. So even though we have this opening, first of all, let me trim these threads off that are making it pucker. All right, so we now have the pocket that you can see from the outer part. What we're gonna do is we're going to top stitch the fabric so that it lays nice and smooth, because right now it's not smooth. So you're gonna turn it on the wrong side, and if this makes it better for you, you can take an iron and you can press your seam down. If you're pretty experienced at sewing, you may not need to press it. I'm just gonna go ahead and start sewing. So I am going to make sure that my sewing machine is a little bit on the outside of the seam. And I'm going to go ahead and top stitch both sides of the seam so that the seam lays nice and flat. So here we go. And once you get to the opening, you're gonna have to just make sure to fold it over evenly. And now that I'm getting close to the end of the opening, I can just press it flat. And there we go. So now I just need to turn it around and sew the other side. And once I get to the opening, again, pulling it nice and tight so that it can smooth out the opening and be flush and go straight. Awesome. So now, when you turn it over, you can see that it's pressed nice and flat, and we have an open pocket. And that's where we put our filter. All right, so the next step, now that we have our back piece of our mask and that there's the pocket and we've top stitched the opening, now we're going to put the two pieces together. So you're gonna take the front part of your mask and you're going to take the back part of your mask and put the right sides facing together. Now make sure that the pocket is at the top. So if you have a directional fabric, you want to make sure that it is facing up. So see my words, it says game over, it's facing up, and so the pocket is at the top. So that's gonna make sure that when I have a filter in, that it goes in from the top and it won't be upside down and the filter could possibly fall out. So we're gonna line up the edges and we are going to sew 1/2 inch in across the top and 1/2 inch across the bottom. Don't forget to reverse your stitch. Make sure that your fabric is lined up. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and trim. All right, and now you are going to sew 1/2 inch in from the bottom. Okay, so now it is sewn at the top and the bottom, and we can turn our mask right side out. So we're going to turn the mask right side out. And now we are going to attach the elastic to the mask. All right, so now that we have sewn the top and bottom of our mask, we are going to go ahead and add the elastic to the top and bottom. So what we're going to do is take the longer piece of elastic and we're going to put it into the top. It's going to be very close to the seam. So I would say maybe 1/8 of an inch down from the seam. You are going to tuck it in and we're going to sew 1/2 of an inch in over it. So we're going to stitch all the way down, but we need to make sure to put our elastic in first so that we catch our elastic in the side of the mask. And then once we do one side, we're going to go ahead and pull the elastic. So it might bunch up a little bit, but that's because the elastic is stretchy. You're going to pull your elastic and sew the elastic on this side and at the bottom as well. So make sure that the longer piece of elastic is what's going at the top, because of course the top of your head is going to be wider than the bottom part. So I like to pull my elastic out a little bit before I sew it so that it's not so close to the part that could possibly unravel and then it can pull out of the mask. You don't want your elastic to break on you. So I would just have it sticking out just a little bit from the end. And so now we can go ahead and sew 1/2 inch in. Make sure to reverse your stitch. Reverse a couple times if you want over the elastic to make sure that it's secure in place. And since I already went ahead and I put in my elastic at the top, now I'm going to go ahead and feed my elastic in at the bottom. And again, I'm going to have a little bit of the elastic sticking out at the bottom. And again, you're going to make sure that it's 1/8 of an inch from the bottom stitch. And you can go back and forth just to make sure to secure the elastic. And now you can trim. And again, we're going to repeat the process. Make sure that when you are putting in the elastic on the other side that you feel that the elastic is flat, because you don't want your elastic to get twisted when you sew it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and sew the other side of the mask. Please make sure when you pull your elastic through that a little bit of it is sticking on the outside of the mask, so that way the elastic doesn't have any chance of popping out or unraveling from your mask. And we're gonna sew a 1/2 inch in, and also make sure that it's nice and smooth in here so there's no twisting of your elastic. So go ahead and reverse your stitch over the elastic a few times to make sure you secure it in place, and go ahead and line up your fabric and sew 1/2 inch down all the way. Now when you get to the bottom, this part is a little bit more tricky because again, the elastic on the bottom is smaller, so the fabric does tend to bunch up a little bit. I went ahead and I pinned my elastic in place so that I didn't have to worry about it being twisted, and also to make sure that the elastic was sticking out of my mask. And so it's sticking out, and I'm gonna go ahead, sew it all the way down. Reverse my stitch a few times over the elastic. And that's it. Cut off any loose ends. And so now we have the elastic sewn into our mask, and we're going to turn it on the right side now. All right, so you can see that we have the front of our mask, and what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to top stitch the top and bottom of our mask. So you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the top all the way across, and 1/8 of an inch on the bottom all the way across. At this point, you may want to iron your mask. It's totally up to you. I just like to stick it straight into the machine. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put it right there. Make sure you move your elastic out the way so you don't sew into your elastic. And as I go, I just make sure to smooth out my edge. those threads off. And now I'm going to do the top of my mask. Make sure your elastic is out of the way. Alright guys, so now we have the top and the bottom of our mask stitched, and now we're going to go ahead and pleat the side of our mask so that we can sew the mask pleats in, and then we'll be done with our mask. Alright, so the finished product, your mask is going to measure approximately 5 inches. So from the top, you're going to want to start your first pleat 1 inch down. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and fold it 1/2 inch down, okay? And so you're going to want to pin your pleat in place because of course it's going to be hard to keep it from coming apart while you're sewing. So make sure to pin that pleat in place, and then you are going to go 1 inch after that pleat down and make your second pleat. All right guys, so we have our pleated mask and we're gonna go ahead and sew 1/2 inch from each side and make sure to secure our pleats. So make sure that the elastic is out of the way, and I'm gonna have to pull my first needle out. All right, and I'm gonna go 1/2 inch. Make sure you reverse your stitch. All right, I've gotta pull that other needle out. And again, don't forget to move the elastic out the way. And reverse your stitch. Let's pull this out. All right, I just trimmed that side. And now we're gonna go ahead and sew the other side. So I'm gonna take out my first needle, and you can see that it moved just a little bit. So I'm gonna make sure and push that over because I want my lines to be nice and straight. And again, don't forget to move the elastic out of the way. My elastic is hiding from me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, reverse my stitch, and pull out that pleat. Make sure it's in place. And move that piece of elastic out the way. All right, if you have any loose ends, any threads that are still on your mask, you trim them off. And voila, you guys, we have our mask. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on so you can see what it looks like. So it's pleated right now. And I can pull these up above my ear. And I have the other one below on the back part of my neck. And now I have a mask. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I like my gamer mask. I think I'm gonna give it to my son because he loves to play Fortnite. So I think this one's for him. All right, so my mask is done. It's got the pleats in the front, and again, it has the pocket in the back. And I actually prefer my pocket to be on the inside of the mask because I don't want it puckering open or for anything to go inside of the mask. And I feel like it fits better and it's nicer when the pocket is on the inside and it's not seen. All right, guys, that's the end of today's tutorial. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's work hard together to keep our community safe. If you happen to know anybody that wants to sew a mask, please make sure to share this with them. You can check out more videos from me every Wednesday at 2 p.m. And please make sure to go on all of your social media platforms and follow me at Willow Mint Props. And if you love this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to my channel.